Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, Fitz and Gills and Coles, the three of us together again to talk about hopefully not too much BYU. I think Chris Kleiman is right. It's time to move on. But Gills picks a question. So if Gills deems a question worthy of being in this show, it shall be in this show. In other words, if you don't like the questions he chose and it seems negative, it's all Gills' fault.
Blame me. There's a few in the beginning that we kind of have to address. I think they're going to be fair to talk about, but by halftime, by the second half of this podcast, we'll be moved on.
I learned today on YouTube from the comments that I'm a sunshine pumper and I never ask hard questions. So I will do that amongst us three to try to practice at asking hard questions. Since I feel like I do, I must not be. I don't.
That's how you know we are good at our jobs, when you got people that say that fits, and then there's also sometimes people say we're being too harsh, too negative on these kids. That's how you know we're doing a good job, guys.
And I do want to kind of talk about that before we get into the questions, guys, because I know that over at Wabash Station there was a few threads that were, talking about how come reporters don't ask the questions, the hard questions. And I think that it's important for fans to understand that immediately after a game is not the time to grill a coach about a specific outcome.
Right.
They have a cool down period, but how many times do we see it? That cool down period really, it doesn't mean much.
When you get your ass kicked like that, it's going to take a day to cool down.
Right. And it's not about, trying to keep a relationship with the coach to get inside information. Honestly, at least from my experience, and Fitz, you obviously have, a lot more experience. And it's really just about, you don't want to put the coach in a position to make him look bad.
Well,
right. That's really what it comes down to at least after a game, because how many times do we see those clips of coaches going off on reporters, and it's never, what a horrible question. It's always, look at what this stupid coach did.
Yeah. It's not really that much to me. My thing is, when can I get the best answer?
Yeah.
When is the proper time to ask this question? And also, I say this all the time, people, we're not here to fight your fights. Like, if you're emotional, we're not supposed to be. We're not here to be emotional. We're here to cover the team in a fair way for you and the team. Tell the truth. But it doesn't mean we have to be confrontational and get in a coach's face. Why are you letting him call the plays this way? Why are you doing? That's not our job. That's seeing things from your heart and emotions way too much. We're here to analyze things and then ask questions at the appropriate time. Can you hear dude drinking?
I don't hear anything.
Okay, good. That lets me know how my microphone works, because it's pretty loud. But yeah, we ask questions. I usually save them for the Monday press conference. Yeah. Actually, having a Tuesday press conference is even better, because they're even further away from the game, and I've really analyzed it and absorbed it. But right after a game, you know what you do. You're going to get, if you ask a really confrontational, fiery question at the end of the game, you're going to get no response in the end of a press conference. So there'll be no more questions asked. That's how it works. But yeah, I love that. We need to ask hard questions, and look, we're willing to ask the questions. I've done it. I do it regularly, but it's also, you're not asking a question to get a reaction. You're asking a question to get an answer, to get information. So yeah, people mistake our role quite often. And some people in this industry do that, seek the reaction, because it is good TV, and it's shameful that they do that. We're supposed to be collectors of information, not causers of information. There we go. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you stop into the Fridge on Friday night when you come into town. If you're coming in early, leave 5 minutes early. Good luck with that, guys. Leave 5 minutes early and roll through the fridge and just grab some stuff and go. Yeah, look, you need to pay. Okay, Ben, I know you just heard everything I said, and you go to the fridge before every game, but don't just grab stuff and go. That was poorly worded on my part, Ben. Don't shoplift. That's how you look out for friends. With your questions from Wabash Station, here's Ryan Gilbert.
First question is from Doug142. Was that the worst meltdown by a K-State football team you have ever seen? I'm sorry, Fitz. I didn't know if you didn't want to talk about this. You should have told me.
Oh no. Look, any of the olds will tell you they've seen much worse circumstances from Kansas State football. I think the greatest meltdown I ever saw was Austin P 1986, I think it was. And there was a 1AA team, and they threw a final Hail Mary to win, and it was incomplete. And then they had a penalty on the defense for offsides. So they lined up exactly like they did before and ran the exact same play. And it worked again, but this time he completed it. And K-State lost. And then the players all danced on the Wildcat and rubbed their butts on it. I wish I was making that up. That's the worst. But yeah, in the meltdown of the K-State football history, no. Recent history, yes. And I don't even think it was a meltdown as much as you just literally saw momentum swing completely in the other team's favor. Like every bounce. I mean, look at the punt return. It was a muff punt that rolled back and almost could have been a touchdown for Kansas State. And instead, he gets control of it and runs it back. It's crazy. So yeah, it was a meltdown in a sense, but it was just awful. I mean, but credit BYU too. They made the plays.
So I wasn't alive when this happened, but I don't know if this counts because I know it said you've seen. So I apologize, Doug. But a few years ago, I want to say last year when we did a Fighting Never Fighting with Mark Porter, friend of Go Powercat and obviously dad of two special teams heroes and Shane and Seth. Shane, by the way, conference player of the week, multiple touchdowns against Wyoming, leading North Texas to victory at running back. So shout out to Shane Porter having a really good season for the Mean Green. Mark talked about the game at Tulane his senior year, the year before Bill Snyder. And Fitz, I'm going to let you tell this story because I think it's absolutely hilarious. And, I'm glad in a sense that I didn't see it, but I actually think that might be the biggest meltdown in the history of K-State football.
I think you're right. I forgot about that one. K-State's about to win at Tulane. K-State doesn't win. No, they don't. I mean, they can't beat anyone under Stan Parrish. And they get to take the lead late, but not that late, not like 10 seconds late. There's time on the clock. But they're confident they're going to win. And so Tulane gets the ball back, and Stan Parrish is waiting for the defensive signals. And he looks over, and coming around the side of the field are all of his coaches from the press box celebrating the victory. But the game wasn't over. They had no defensive calls from above, and Tulane ended up going down the field and winning.
Wasn't there like a really long losing streak too? I think that part of that story.
They, under Parrish, they were under a 30-game winless streak. There was a tie with Kansas in the middle of it. 30 games in a row without a win. Only one tie in what was known as the Toilet Bowl, in which a final field goal, I think by Kansas, I'm not even sure, was blocked, and the ball was just rolling on the turf and everyone's sliding around trying to get it. Like, it was ridiculous. It was such a bad football game. Nothing you saw on Saturday was as bad as what we experienced.
The 6 to 7 minute stretch, before and after halftime might be the worst stretch, but meltdown, I don't know is the right word here. Yeah. K-State's had much worse losses. A lot of stuff. I talked about this on the Insiders. A lot of the stuff that happened in Provo is very fixable and stuff that you hope this coaching staff can make sure doesn't happen again.
Yep.
Agreed.
Next question from KSU number 1. Would it be fair to say this outcome was really no one's fault, really just a series of unfortunate events that happened in an environment that would have unraveled any team?
I think the environment had an impact, but it wasn't really with the turnovers. It was really with the false starts and those type of things. But yeah, I guess I would agree. As I asked Chris Kleiman, I mean, nobody expects DJ Giddens to fumble that ball, but you did run it 3 times, and he did. And then, maybe I would have preferred that they just at that point hand it off and run the clock out, but you did just fumble handing the ball off, and you throw the interception. It was just one of those, everything decided to align and go wrong. And you're right. People will be mad at the play calling, that some decisions by Chris Kleiman, some of you, maybe the play of Avery Johnson, who I don't really blame. He's going to have a learning curve, folks. It was just one of those stretches that was awful. And for the rest of the game, basically, Kansas State handled it. I mean, they had more yards, more first downs, time of possession was where they wanted it to be. But the turnovers, the penalties, and just kind of the fluky things that happened in the game, like the punt return, that's all lined against K-State.
I don't necessarily think it wasn't anyone's fault. Like that word fault in athletics is a really, really difficult phrase and a difficult word, because the other team's trying to win too. And it was never a given that K-State was going to just go in there and win. Now, would it be somebody's fault if they lost to UT Martin? Then you could probably place the blame on a specific group. I don't think it was anybody's fault. You gotta credit BYU a little bit. They picked up the ball, ran it in the end zone. They caught the interception. They made the plays that they needed to make. Now, did K-State shoot itself in the foot? Yes. And I think maybe that's what this question is asking. Like, did K-State lose this game or did BYU win this game? I believe wholeheartedly K-State lost this game. They gave the game away. They baked cookies. They put them in the oven. They took them to Provo and they said, do you want these cookies? And instead of BYU being nice and Midwestern and saying no, they said, yes, give them to us. And K-State walked away with its tail between its legs.
Dude, go upstairs and get dad cookies. Dude, go get cookies. He doesn't.
They kind of teased BYU a little bit. They didn't give them the cookies until right before halftime. They made them work for it, right?
They did. But seriously, guys, like you go back and you look at that game. I mean, everything that BYU had was because K-State gave it to them. I mean, even the last touchdown, they missed 6 tackles and BYU scored a touchdown. I mean, really the only play was the very beginning on the first field goal was when BYU drove it down inside the red zone. Everything else, heck, guys, the punt. Yes, BYU forced a punt, but K-State gave them the punt return for a touchdown because they ran into their own guy. I mean, again, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but like literally everything BYU got, they took advantage of because K-State gave it to them.
Cold. Needs to cut back on the caffeine.
Cole's got how many 5 hours did you steal from Fitz?
Sorry, I just, I drink an energy drink before football practice so I can get revved up. So you guys are probably experiencing the downside. I think I about took off one of our offensive linemen's heads today. So
you kind of look like one of the versions of Willie Wildcat, if you know what I mean.
That's you. You look like that, Fitz.
Oh, okay. Look, BYU did enough to win. What BYU did that was essential to victory is denied Kansas State the end zone. Because for everything that went wrong, you turn that 6 into 14, it doesn't feel bad at halftime. And maybe then it ends. K-State doesn't call the same sequence of plays down maybe 3 points. But
Fitz, did BYU really deny K-State the end zone, or did K-State just run the football with 3rd and 9 in the red zone?
Well, yeah, I agree. There were some questionable play calls in there, but still they held them out. They got it done.
Yeah.
Maybe that play call was the perfect call in against that defense. I don't know. I'm not that kind of brain scientist. Look, it's someone had to make the tackle. Flip the coin. I mean, if K-State broke 6 tackles, we think what an effort. But at the end of the day, they won those battles. So I'm not going to take that much away from BYU while understanding K-State stunk. The penalties and the turnovers were a real problem. and again, I just come back to this. DJ Giddens fumbling is a fluke, and fumbling in the way he did is a double fluke. If there's such a thing as a double fluke, then I'll just go to triple fluke.
Yeah,
because you're not going to see it again. Probably you may not see him fumble again, and you probably won't see him fumble in such a weird way that the ball flies out and right into the lane of defenders. So I don't know. I want to move on so badly. I'm just trying
real quick. Very
trying
quickly.
to explain World War II to Keith right now. I just can't get through it all.
If there was one, I agree. KSU number one. It is no one's fault. It was definitely a team loss with everything that happened. But guys, I wonder if DJ Giddens did not have that fumble. And I'm not trying to place the blame on DJ, but if he didn't have that fumble, I don't think Avery starts to force some passes in there, and you don't see those interceptions. The defense isn't playing on back against the wall on the first play of the possession. I think, things obviously unraveled like we saw. It was just a snowball effect, but maybe it doesn't start if DJ doesn't have that fumble. So again, I'll say it 3 times, not DJ's fault that K-State lost this game. I just think it'd be really interesting to see what would have happened had that play not happen.
Probably none of it takes place.
agreed.
It was just such a shocking shift of momentum.
Next question from Claws Out, Balls Out. What is it about this coaching staff to have a clunker of a game every year? We haven't even had our after bye week stinker yet. I read Kleiman has never started 4-0 at K-State.
That's going to be something I'll address probably in that off week with a question. But I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, I'm not inside that building. I'm not sure. And maybe the truth is they do such a good job coaching that they cover that up most of the time. Maybe the teams haven't been that good. I don't know. I don't know why this is taking place. They do lose games they should win every year. A lot of programs do that. But Bill Snyder didn't typically do that. And that's why K-Staters are extra sensitive to it. He'd literally, if he got above you in the standings in the kind of the pecking order, he wouldn't lose games. But it would always be the Nebraskas or the next hurdle that he'd have problems clearing. So maybe as a community of fans, we're unaccustomed, to lose those games. But it's also going on all around college football.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a new trend all around college football is, and I truly believe this, the transfer portal's had a reverse effect. It's not not all the top talents congealing in the SEC. Those second and third stringers are going out across college football and transferring out and spreading the talent around. And I just think some of those teams down there are getting more talent from above them, and it's paying off. If you're the right program, you can collect the talent, even if you're like a Tulane or whatever. They'll find you.
So if we think about this, guys, in 2019, Chris Kleiman was 3-0 in his first season, and he lost at Oklahoma State. Ryan Gilbert, I believe that was the game you and I went to down in Stillwater. And that was against a pretty good Oklahoma State team. Mm-hmm. It's hard to win on the road in Stillwater. I don't think Chris Kleiman's beaten Oklahoma State in Stillwater. So that's your loss. 2020, obviously, we know what happens. They lose the first game of the season. 2021 was the year, I believe they started, was that a 2-1 start? Or did they get through non-conference play 3-0 that year? Either way.
2021?
Yes.
Yeah, 3-0, Stanford, SIU, and Nevada.
That's right. So then the first conference game of the season was on the road because that's just what K-State does. And they once again lost, right? 2022 obviously was Tulane. And we all know that Tulane team ended up winning the Cotton Bowl. So you look at and then obviously last year, it is what it is. You go and you look at the teams that Chris Kleiman's lost to in those first 4 games. And I think when we look back at it, it's not going to be a surprise. It's not a surprise because those teams were pretty good. BYU actually might be the outlier there. And so we'll have to wait and see. But I don't necessarily think it's that they're losing to bad teams. I just think that they go up against a team that might be a 50-50 game. And I know people are going to push back on that. And it sounds like I'm making excuses. I'm not. But at the end of the season, we'll see where BYU is. Maybe it looks like a bad loss, and it very well could. But I don't necessarily think it will. So No such thing as a good loss, but I think it has to do a lot with the opponents than it necessarily does with Kansas State, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
my hunch here. Go ahead, Fitz.
No, I'm just like K-State often has to open conference play on the road for whatever reason. It didn't solve itself. I've long theorized somehow K-State was the balance of trying to schedule Oklahoma and Texas on a certain weekend, and something had to shift, and it was always K-State in the algorithm. Apparently that wasn't right, but yeah, so if you're opening on the road, your chances of losing your first conference game go way up. I mean, they just do. And the BYU game is a perfect example of that. I think K-State by season's end will be above BYU in the standings, but it happened. And, just when you have to open on the road, it gets a little chaotic. And they just lost some games you didn't expect. Tulane was way better than we expected, but they caught K-State players not properly prepared. You're dealing with 18 to 20, well, Cam Rising, 73-year-old men. But at K-State, you're 18 to like 23-year-old men. And when you're on the lower side of that, it's hard to focus every game. I mean, you got so much going on. You got studying, you got a girlfriend, you got this. In your immature mind, it's just hard to handle a lot of this. So college, that's part of the reason why we like college sports, is there's this unpredictability to it that makes it entertaining. It just sucks when it's your team that becomes unpredictable in a negative way.
Yeah, Fitz, I kind of piggyback off of that. Broader picture, not just looking at the first 4 games or pre-bye, whatever, but last year it was obviously the worst loss was Iowa State. That was to end out the regular season. Okay, guys, that was coming off of a really emotional, gutsy win on the road against your rival Kansas. Year before that, in 2022, the worst loss was Tulane, right? That was right after a dominant victory over what we thought was perceived to be a good Missouri team. In that season, that might be up for debate, but what happens this year? Okay, you beat Arizona. We thought Arizona was going to be really freaking good. Maybe they're not, but it was a very dominant, convincing win. So I'm getting at here is complacency. That's my hunch, and I could be totally off on this, but if there's one thing to pinpoint here with what the question's asking about, why Kleiman has these letdown games or the stinkers, as it was phrased, maybe his teams, that's how it's kind of been the last 3 years. The ugliest losses have been after either a dominant win or an emotional win or an impressive win, whatever, what have you. It's after a win like that. And obviously, guys, Chris Kleiman hasn't lost back-to-back games since 2021, right? And so after his teams, never mind. I forget what I just said. That doesn't make sense. But yeah, complacency.
I'm not going to forget. I'm not. I'm going to just remember.
I'm always going to remember that. I'm never going to let that go.
No, never mind. Doesn't make sense.
The good news is, Gills, I wasn't really even listening to you.
Well, his worst losses don't come after a loss because he doesn't lose back-to-back games. That's the point I was trying to get out there.
That's fair.
It's true.
Thank you.
That's why I'm pretty confident.
Were you listening to that? Did you listen to that?
Yeah. Yes.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Shall we move on? Last question of our first half is from El Camino Cat. Avery is cool. DJ is quiet. When this offense isn't playing well or needs a boost, where does the fire come from?
I thought it was going to be a poem the way you were reading it. Dang. Avery is cool. DJ is quiet.
So there's a lot to this question because think back to last year. Think back to last year as Fitz is trying to turn into Langston Hughes for a second. Ben Sinnott, we know he was the fire because after that game against Texas, he went into post-game media and looked like he wanted to rip the camera's head off. He was looking straight at the lens. Will Howard is my guy. I don't know why the fans boo Will Howard. Don't boo Will Howard. There's nobody on this offense that I don't think would do that. I think Hayden Gillum was the fire. I think Will was the fire. I think Ben was the fire. I don't know who that fire is on this offense. I don't. Is it Jace Brown? Is it Jace? Is Jace Brown going to be the guy to stand up and say something? Is it Keegan Johnson? Guys, you know who this answer might be? It might be Dylan Edwards. Dylan might be the guy to get them going. And I kind of tend to tend to think that Dylan is the vocal guy inside of that huddle saying, hey, let's get this going. Give me the ball. I'm going to make sure that we get this done. And I know people perceive Avery to be this calm, cool, collected guy, but he's a really good leader too. And so I think those two guys combined are going to be the fire for this offense.
I'll say this. I think if DJ Giddens says 10 words about it, and I'm serious about this, everyone will listen.
Mm-hmm.
If he just says something like, guys, we're better than this, let's be better than this, or something like that, that will resonate so loudly through that locker room. I don't count.
12. That was 12.
12. Well, that's
wow. More than 10.
You're so good at math.
The problem, Avery Johnson, I appreciate that he's not a rah-rah guy, because he is not a rah-rah guy. He's cool, collected, got some swagger. He is a good leader, but he's not the guy that's going to do that. But, leadership doesn't resonate the same when it's forced or faked, right? And so if you're Avery Johnson, don't change. DJ, stay quiet. I get it. I get what the question's asking. K-State, you kind of do need a guy that light a fire, especially after maybe the way things went in Provo. Would have been, nice to have a character like, I don't know, like you said, Ben Sinnott from last year, for example, Cole. But, Avery Johnson is not him. So I will say this: Avery Johnson shouldn't change, because then that's just not who he is, and it doesn't resonate the same with the team when you're forcing it.
I do think El Camino, it's a really valid point.
Sure.
They lost some really vocal leadership, and I think we assumed others would step in it, and maybe there's just a little emptiness, a void there in the leadership on the offense side of the ball. And what I mean, not true leadership, but emotional leadership, accountability. So I think you could be right. Losing Sinnott and Howard and Hadley. And not Hadley, geez, Hayden Gillum is just huge. But I think you nailed it. I think that's something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, me too.
It's pretty comparable to year number one with Jerome Tang, with Noel and Johnson. K-State had a number of issues on the court for sure, with turnovers and all that, but there wasn't a bona fide leader, and so maybe Chris Kleiman better talk with Tang, and because that's something you do need a leader. Now, obviously, Avery is the leader, but he's not, you have different leaders at different, parts of you. Tang talked about that on Monday. You have your rah-rah guys. You have your guys that, get serious, lock in. You have different kind of leaders for different aspects of the game of your team, right? Not every team has to have a Barry Brown or a Poland on it. You can have a different group of leaders leading in different ways, if that makes sense.
Agreed.
Nice.
That's nice, Skills. That's nice.
So you listened again, huh?
What?
You listen to me again? Oh, goodness.
That's it for the first half of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Ryan Gilbert stepped out of the room, and we will all step out of the room and be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. During that commercial, I had to rearrange the order of everyone from memory.
Sorry.
I got it right. Our screen looks the same. It's kind of shocking because Ryan Gilbert is indeed a known troublemaker. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you stop into the Fridge on Saturday. Don't interrupt the ad. And pick up whatever you need for your tailgate. If you need ice or cups or a puppy. Actually, I don't think they have puppies, but it'd be cool. Kevin, what if you sold puppies too? Anyhow, stop by the Fridge. They don't have puppies. They got booze. That'd be actually a really good little catch line for them. That's better than get you some. Now we're going to get some more questions from Wabash Station, our second half of the podcast with Ryan Gilbert.
First question of the second half is from Go Stay Kate. How does our running game not open up the passing game?
Interesting.
I love that question. Gilbert, I'm serious. Help me remember that question for if this persists, because that's a simple way to put it. Why is the running game not opening up the passing game more than it is? Because it is a good running game. I don't have an answer. If you saw today's daily delivery, I'm really baffled by the receivers, and I've come to the conclusion it's not necessarily the players, because we always think it's going to get better and it doesn't. They didn't touch the middle of the field until the fourth quarter in Pro Bowl, and maybe it was how they were defending it, but they don't get to the middle of the field very often. Is that to protect Avery? I don't know, but they need to diversify this throwing game desperately and get more guys involved. And if the guys on the field aren't getting it done, whether it's routes, catching, blocking, I don't care. Let's go to a young guy and let them learn.
I don't think I feel like they said they were going to simplify the passing game. And when they said simplify the passing game, you know how like in fractions, when you have to like cut fractions in half, so 3/6 turns to 1/2. Did we ever take into account that when they said, yes, I know you're doing math, but did we ever take into account that, and they literally meant if we were going to throw the ball 3 times and complete 6 of them, now we're going to throw the ball 2 times and complete 1 of them, right? Like, did we think about that when they said simplify the passing game? Like they're literally going to cut down on the number of times they pass the ball? This is what it feels like.
I'm with you. Like, we simplified it by getting rid of the plays at work.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I really don't. And I do need to ask that question. I wish I had an answer to this. I really do. I'm so confused by Kansas State's passing game. And I do think they need to really evaluate what they're doing with that. I thought Matt Wells was going to come in and bring some stuff to the table. This has been basically the same stuff.
I want to see more rollouts. I want to see more getting Avery outside of the pocket on a design. Very, very typical for him to kind of catch the ball, sit in the pocket, which is fine. Like there are definitely routes where he needs to do that. But 99% of the time, maybe not 99, 90% of the time, he is best when he is outside of the pocket. So you can still design plays for when Avery Johnson can be on the run and not even give him an option to run. If it's not there, throw it away. That's fine. But look to see if he can make a play on the run, because when he is best when he has those kind of plays. And if it's as simple as, running routes over the middle, and if you want to run a comeback route on the outside, which you love to run, or if you want to run a swing route, with throwing it back, it doesn't matter. But I want to see Avery Johnson getting outside the pocket on design plays, because I think that actually would really benefit him. And guys, it could open up the passing game, because he, again, Fitz, like you talk about all the time, when he's able to, like a basketball player, when you can see it go down, when you can see it go through the hoop, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to get going. I would love to see a sprint out, just a little out route to the tight end, the first series of the game against Oklahoma State. Okay, now he's locked in. Now he can really start to get going with the passing.
Well, when he gets into the open field, it attracts attention. If you don't have him bottled up in the pocket, it's going to cause you problems. And you look at the touchdown to Swanson in New Orleans. The reason Swanee broke loose was a safety saw Avery moving into the open, so he came up in case there was a run, and he created a space behind him for the tight end to sneak into. That's what happens when Avery's on the move. People have to pay attention, and it will open up routes. Again, we talk about your eyes. Trust your eyes. Well, if you lose track of where you're supposed to be in a zone coverage, or even man particularly, because your eyes are on the quarterback, you're screwed. If people make plays, you're screwed. So put defenses in that kind of stress. And I at the end of the day, I don't think this offense is stressing defenses enough. We're going to hand it off now. We're going to hand it off now. And instead of making sure everyone feels threatened by Avery Johnson or Dylan Edwards, or, even DJ Giddens, but, more of those two guys, because they can go to the house at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't think they're stressing the defense.
Yeah. The only thing I would add, Fitz, is like you said, I mean, the running game for K-State is good, but it could be better, with Avery Johnson, more designed runs, seeing more of Edwards and Giddens in the backfield. Personally, I think that would make it even better. And in turn, that would force defenses to sell out, stop that run, and obviously open up that passing game even more. So the question, yes, but it could be, the running game, it could be even better than we're seeing it right now.
Agreed.
Thank you. I needed your affirmation before we moved on. Thank you.
Affirmed.
Next question is from O2 Cat. Bypassing a lot of other things to talk about, what needs to happen to get more production to pressure and sack the quarterback? Mott is playing fantastic right now, but after the UT Martin game, we're not seeing much from the rest of the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're doing a good job with pressure. I mean, Austin Romaine caused a strip sack in New Orleans. I thought they pressured Ratzlaff a lot. But he just handled it. He's kind of turning out to be the cool hand Luke that we thought maybe Avery would be. And Avery's going to have to go through, some of that learning, but it was also a home game for him. So I think they do a good job of pressuring. You go back to the Arizona game, folks. I mean, that's one of the best receiver quarterback combos. And they made Noah Fafita throw away a lot of balls because he was running. He was trying to get away from pressure. So, getting sacks isn't the only measurement of affecting a play. It's the most resounding, but if you're causing quarterbacks to throw balls away or even throw interceptions, you're still having effective pressure. And I think they are. I do. I think they can be better. I'm with you. I think this team has the ability to be much better at this, but I think they've been effective. It's been one of the better strengths of this team.
Fitz, that's what I was going to say too. You can't just look at sacks as the statistic for pressures. And a lot of the time when you get behind in a game, you're not going to blitz anyway because you don't want to give up another big play. And so I don't think K-State brought a lot of pressure. And part of that is too, BYU didn't really throw the ball that much in the second half because they were winning. And so when they needed a pressure, I thought they did a really good job. They got to them and they forced some incompletions. And so I'm not worried. I'm really not worried, especially at home, because you have that advantage as a defender of having the home crowd behind you. And this pass rush, Gilbert, we've seen it time and time again. Man, they turn up when they are at home. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing them get to Alan Bowman, particularly because he is not a mobile quarterback. And so I'm not worried about this pass rush. Brennan Mott's been great. I think at times Chidi Obiazar has been really good. And the stunts that the linebackers have brought have been extremely effective.
You mentioned the game circumstances, Cole, like bingo, like the way that the BYU and Arizona games have both gone for their different reasons are not favoring the need, or I guess the effort to go out and try to sack the quarterback. You know what I mean? So, if this is more of a real game, against Oklahoma State, I think that this certainly, I'm not hitting the panic button on the pass rush. This is an opportunity against Oklahoma State to kind of get to the quarterback. And, Cole, you mentioned that sacks aren't the only thing that matters, but if you do get those sacks, obviously this question is probably not asked, right? The fan base isn't upset with the pass rush, and I think they can get to Bowman on Saturday. Absolutely, man.
And it's not like it is in the NFL where you have these wide outside defensive ends who it's 3rd and long and they are getting around the tackle, dipping their shoulder and going for a sack, right? Like you don't have complete dominant defensive ends in college football. And especially K-State does not have a guy like a TJ Watt or, like some of these pass rushers, Aiden Hutchinson, these guys that we see in the NFL. Those guys literally, there's a reason why there's only like 3 or 4 of them in the NFL. And so it's really hard to consistently sack the quarterback, especially in the college game.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for the TJ Watt shout out.
Yeah, I had to do that. You're welcome.
At Gills, I sneezed and I had to take care of some business of telling dude I was going to live through it.
I'm surprised dude did not end up in the press box in Provo when you sneezed.
I know.
Didn't care about you, I guess.
Well, it's probably too far. Plus, his jet's in the shop. So,
if he really cared, he'd find a way, Fitz, to get out there.
That's valid. He's right. He doesn't care.
Next question from El Camino Cat again. Which happens first? Avery Johnson runs for a touchdown, or a K-State wide receiver catches a touchdown? How crazy is it that neither of these things have happened, and we're a third of the way through the regular season?
That's remarkable. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say Avery runs for one. I have a feeling Avery's going to get loose a little bit on Saturday. So that was interesting. After the BYU game, Coach Sataki said that he was the number one thing and needed to stop him in the other running game. And I guess they did a good job. I thought K-State ran the ball pretty well, but it almost seemed to me they were taking away the passing game as much as anything. But yeah, all eyes will be on Avery, but I think he'll get into the end zone.
I'm gonna say a wide receiver scoring a touchdown first, because this just feels like a Jaden Jackson touchdown, or like a random receiver is gonna have the first touchdown. Remember when Jaden Jackson on that streak last year where he had the first touchdown in like 3 straight games, and everybody's like, Jaden Jackson, he's a weapon, and then he's just like disappeared or dropped every pass that's been thrown to him ever since. I just feel like this is a game where it's gonna get weird. Like, for better lack of a phrase, this is going to be another weird game. Avery, I think, will get into the end zone at some point, especially on the goal line. They had all those goal line problems on Saturday. That's not going to happen again. They're going to use Avery because you have an extra player when you rush the quarterback. So, you know what? If you're a betting person, I really do like an anytime Avery Johnson touchdown. But I would also maybe look at maybe a receiver, probably a Jace Brown or a Keegan Johnson getting in there. Because, guys, if we think about this, both of these questions really should have been solved. Keegan Johnson scored a touchdown that got negated on a false start, and Avery Johnson scored a touchdown that got negated on a holding penalty, which wasn't a holding penalty, by the way. But, again, so like I think it is just one of those anomalies, guys.
There's some guys on this receiving core that I'm not sure have ever been sick, because it looks like they're immune from catching anything. Thank you. That's it. Make sure you tip your waitresses and the bartenders. We'll be back next week. Oh, we got more questions. Hold on. Go ahead. Sorry.
Goodness.
Gilbert's not happy.
Goodness. After a whole weekend in Provo with you, I can't get away from these jokes.
No.
Unbelievable. So obviously Avery hasn't ran for one, and the wideouts haven't caught one. I think Avery, it's much more easy. I don't want to say fixable, but like getting Avery into the end zone with his legs, we've seen that so much with his high school tape, and we saw it last year, what he could do at Texas Tech running the ball. That he's proven that he can do that. But these wideouts from top to bottom haven't necessarily proven or earned my confidence that they can do that. So my answer would be Avery Johnson running in for a touchdown. And I think that BYU game there was a lot of stuff for K-State staff to take away from that game. But one of those takeaways is probably get Avery, running the football more.
Agreed.
I like it.
All right. Last question from Fervent Purple. What changes from a scheme and play call perspective would you like to see this Saturday in the Oklahoma State game?
Well, look, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a guy to design plays against defenses I don't know. I mean, I haven't had time to scout Oklahoma State with that road game, so I'm not sure what exactly will work. But I hope they get to more parts of the playbook that are creative. And I'm going to keep saying this because it worked against Arizona, and then they barely did it in Provo. You got to get Giddens and Dillon and Avery out there together. It just stresses the defense, and it just puts too much on their table to handle. And if Avery Johnson goes through the progressions of his reads, and I think this is a read option team, and he's the reader. And I would put my belief that he's going to make the right decisions, because that's a comfortable place for him to be. And I don't know. I think they just need to really get to that. And that doesn't mean run the ball. That means spread the ball around. I have said it from the very start. I would love to see them put those guys out there together, including a tight end, and then empty the backfield and go to 5 wide. See what the defense does with all of those talents on the edge, and Avery Johnson sitting there with 5 linemen in front of him, and you probably have 5 or maybe 6 guys in the box to try to stop him. Have fun.
These guys are no dummies. These offensive coaches, as much as we might disagree sometimes with the play calling, it's very easy to go back in and look. And you know what? We have no idea what the play call is. We have an idea of what the play call might be, but there are so many moving parts to an offense that there very well could be, hey, we got 2 plays called. If we go up to the formation and the defense is in this, then we're going to run this. If their defense is in this, then we're going to run the other play. And that might be frustrating for some fans, but like I saw there was a question about Avery audibling, like he hasn't checked out of some stuff, and I think that's something that is, I don't want to say noticeable now, but I have been kind of looking for that, and maybe it's just because when Coach Schneider was here, they would run down the play clock to 0 seconds every single time, and Colin Klein would be up there at the offense yelling at him, and they'd snap the ball at 1 or they'd get a delay a game. But football is so much different now, and there's so many different things that can happen on one play. So it's not even just different plays that can be called. It's different plays within the same play. I mean, the offensive line might be blocking this way, and because it's a read, Avery might take off and run the other way when they could run the exact same play and he could hand it off. So it's not just a read option. There's so many different moving parts to an offense. Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean they're not going to call it again. And just because it worked doesn't mean that they're going to call it again. And so, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know schematically what they're doing or what they should do, but I do know they need to get their best players the ball. That much is very simple. Find a way to get number 3 the ball, find a way to get number 2 the ball, and find a way to get number 31 the ball. That's it.
3 words.
Number 1.
More Dylan Edwards, and is all I have for you.
I'm with you. He is like Avery. He is a crease away from a touchdown. And DJ has hit some creases because he's a brilliant runner. He sees space really well. He feels space. And he gets into the open field, but he just doesn't have the jets to do it. Those guys do. And it's time they put them in a position to do that more often. We'll find out. I think this team will rally against Oklahoma State. Gills, were you the one that said on the Insiders that you almost feel better about this game because K-State lost?
That was me.
As you?
Mm-hmm.
And I agree.
I agree, though. I agree.
I do. I agree. I think if Oklahoma State loses and K-State wins, Oklahoma State's got an emotional advantage because they got a desperation that isn't matched by the home team. Now, both of these teams know they need to win. You can't lose your first 2 games in this conference and be comfortable. You can survive that, but you've got so much stress ahead of taking care of business. So this is a big one. It really is. Meanwhile, I'll keep an eye on Arizona at Utah. We all expect from what we've seen that Utah will run away with it, but that's been a pretty feisty rivalry for the last few years. I'm going to keep an eye on that one. It's a pretty good, entertaining weekend in Big 12 football. There's some good matchups of teams that we need more answers. And I don't think we have all the answers about K-State or BYU or Utah or Oklahoma State at this point. There's a lot more football to be played. It starts for the conference Saturday at 7 a.m. What am I doing? 11 a.m. I was like setting content in the admin, Gills. Well, the start of the day is 7 a.m. 11 a.m. Kansas State, Oklahoma State at the Bill. Gills, Coles, great job. That's it for the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.